The Seattle Seahawks are a young and upcoming team that have many young, talented playmakers on both sides of the ball. And it is clear to us that Seattle Seahawks have constructed this team in such a manner that they have now set themselves up to be contenders for many years to come.
And the largest catalyst for the Seahawks' current run of success is, of course, the assets they received from trading Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos. And while most people believe that the Seattle Seahawks clearly came on top of that trade, with a deeper review, this move by the Seattle Seahawks wasn't just a good move. It wasn't just a great move. It could potentially be, and it looks like it probably will be, one of the smartest moves in NFL history. And that's what we're covering today.
The Seattle Seahawks made one of the biggest trades of the last decade when they traded quarterback Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos. Now, we can sit back and look at the records of the Broncos and the Seahawks and make guesses at who won and lost the trade. But to accurately assess who wins and loses in the trade, you need to analyze the assets each team got and see what they did with all of them. In this trade, the Denver Broncos received quarterback Russell Wilson along with the Seahawks 2022 fourth round pick. The Seahawks got Broncos 2022 first round pick, their 2023 first round pick, their 2022 second, their 2023 second, along with a 2022 fifth and players Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, and Drew Lock. Let's first take a look at what the Seahawks got and what they were able to do with all of those picks. The first selection was Charles Cross out of Mississippi State. This was a round one, pick number 9 of the 2022 draft. This was a very solid selection by the Seattle Seahawks, garnering a 63.1 PFF grade last season, and he is a potential stalwart at the left tackle position for Seattle for some years to come. Up next, with their 2023 first round pick from Denver, Seattle selected Devon Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. This was one of the top cornerbacks in the draft with an elite 92.0 PFF grade in college last year. I think he will pair very nicely with late round pick Tariq Woolen for the foreseeable future, making an elite cornerback tandem. Next up, we have Boye Mafe from Minnesota. He was second round pick number 40 of the 2022 draft. This is a pass rush specialist in college who's been developing very nicely for Seattle. He got a 65.8 PFF grade last season, totaling up 3 sacks. I think this is a good piece for Seattle that will keep developing and be a strong contributor going forward. Derek Hall out of Auburn was a round 2 pick number 38 of the 2023 draft. He's an undersized but successful pass rusher in college who tallied up 8 sacks last season and got a 71.3 PFF grade. It has remained to see how Hall will pan out, but I think he has potential to be a player in the NFL going forward. Tyreek Smith of Ohio State, a round 5 pick, number 158 of the 2022 draft, was a developmental pass rusher, but a good run defender in college. He has the ability to develop in the Seattle Seahawks system, but has remained to be seen whether he will be a contributor in the NFL yet or not. Seattle also received Noah Fant from the Denver Broncos. He was from Iowa, and he was the number 20 pick in the first round of the 2019 draft. He is more of a pure receiving threat, catching 4 touchdowns last season. It remains to be seen if he can turn it around in Seattle and live up to his first round selection, but he has all of the potential in the world. Seattle also got Shelby Harris, a defensive tackle who is no longer with the Seahawks and is a free agent as of now. And finally, Seattle received Drew Lock, a quarterback from the Broncos. Lock was from Missouri. He was a second round pick, number 42 of the 2019 draft. He proved to be a serviceable backup QB who kept things close in the 2022 training camp and seems to be a good asset at backup for Seahawks going forward. The Broncos received quarterback Russell Wilson. This was the shining gem of that trade. He is a Super Bowl champion, Walter Payton Man of the Year in 2020, and a 9-time Pro Bowler. But Russell Wilson failed to live up to the hype last season, but there could be a turnaround with new head coach Sean Payton at the helm, but that is yet to be seen. The other thing the Broncos got in the trade was Seattle's fourth round pick, which was pick number 116 of the 2022 draft. With that pick, they pick Inyoma Azuraki. He's a rotational defensive line piece who is currently suspended indefinitely for gambling in the NFL.
But with any trade in the NFL, it's more than just the assets in terms of the players that change hands that really matters. It's also the effect on the salary cap for both teams. Every NFL team is constrained by the salary cap, regardless of how talented the players are. Every player has to get paid under the constraints and the limit of the salary cap, and that has become the most dominant force into how teams manage their rosters. So, in order to effectively evaluate the trade from the Seahawks and Broncos perspective, the salary cap hits have to be considered. The most important factor is the guaranteed cap hit. Those are the dollars that will be counted against the team's cap hit no matter what, whether any of the team's required players are cut, traded, or retire. These are dollars that cannot be adjusted with any fancy salary cap tricks. This is what will be against both team salary caps. The Broncos received a guaranteed cap hit of $107.5 million as a result of this trade. Now, the majority of that is obviously from Russell Wilson's contract, but that's still a significant hit. The Seattle Seahawks only received a $73.2 million guaranteed cap hit as a result of this trade. That is obviously much less, about $34 million less than the Denver Broncos cap hit. That gives Seattle a lot of wiggle room to make other acquisitions on the roster. In fact, this past offseason, the Seattle Seahawks did just that by locking up current starting quarterback and looking like a potential star quarterback, Geno Smith, to an extended deal. When you combine the Seahawks salary cap hit that they received from this trade, plus the guaranteed cap hit from Geno Smith, the Seahawks total comes to $100.5 million. So to put this in another perspective, for the price of Russell Wilson and one mid-round draft pick, the Seattle Seahawks got 8 players, Geno Smith, and still have $7 million of guaranteed cap space left over. That is how you win a trade in the salary cap world. But obviously, there's more than just winning a trade in terms of the players you received and the dollars they count against. The players have to be good. They have to produce on the field. The Seahawks record pre and post the Russell Wilson trade speaks for itself, but the advanced analytics also indicate that Seattle got a lot better as a result of the trade. The most important statistic to evaluate a team's overall performance is net yards per passing attempt. Passing in today's NFL is the most dominant force in the game. Net yards per passing attempt is a great statistic because it factors not only yards per attempt, but also factors in sacks, interceptions, and touchdowns. It's a great way to evaluate the quarterback position, the offensive line position, the wide receiver position, the defensive line, and the defensive backfield in one foul swoop. In 2021, with Russell Wilson still on the Seahawks roster, Seattle ranked about middle of the pack in terms of net yards per passing attempt surrendered. That's how good their defense was doing. And about 8th from bottom in the NFL, 24th, and net yards per passing attempt 4 as an indication of an offense. That's far from ideal. And as fans of Seahawks will remember, that was not an ideal season. Fast forward to 2022. The net yards per passing attempt surrendered leaped to the upper third of the NFL, while the net yards per passing attempt 4 moved to slightly above average. That's a monumental leap from the 2021 season. These advanced analytics are a strong indication that Seahawks picked up a lot of value in terms of the players they acquired from the trade, not just in dollars per cents, not just in draft capital, but actual on-field production. And here's where it gets even better for the Seattle Seahawks. 2 draft picks, specifically Witherspoon, the corner from the University of Illinois, has not, at the time of this video, played a single down for the Seattle Seahawks yet. It is likely those net yards per passing attempt numbers, in terms of surrendered, will go up as some of these new defensive players get added. And as Charles Cross continues to develop as an offensive tackle, their net yards per passing attempt 4 will likely go up as well. The trend for Seattle, in terms of the players they acquired, is continuing to move up. So the results they saw from 2021 to 2022 are only the beginning. This team will only get better as a result of this trade. And this leads into the final overarching point in the genius behind the Seattle Seahawks Russell Wilson trade. Currently in the NFL, there are 2 schools of thoughts for developing a winner. You have to draft a rookie quarterback who develops into a solid player very quickly. And while he is on a cheap rookie deal, overpay to a certain extent to surround him with veteran talent. You'll overpay for wide receivers, offensive tackles, corners, and pass rushers. The other strategy is to acquire a veteran quarterback and then use a lot of short-term cap space and draft capital to surround him with veteran talent for a short-term run at a title. Think the recent Tom Brady era with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Matt Stafford era currently with the Los Angeles Rams. Both teams captured a title, but both teams seem to be on a rapid downward trajectory as a result of it. What the Seahawks have proven by winning this trade and the execution of it is another way to win in the NFL. Instead of having a young quarterback on a rookie deal, they have their veteran, Geno Smith. And instead of overpaying for veteran talent, they got the assets from the trade for Russell Wilson to get talent at those same positions, but on cheap rookie deals. Again, it's the inverse. Instead of having veteran receivers, veteran defensive backs, veteran offensive linemen, and as expensive and potentially injury prone as those veterans might be, they have young offensive linemen, young defensive backs, young receivers, and young pass rushers while having a veteran quarterback. It is the ultimate inverse of the situation in a way that removes a lot of the risk of veteran players, injuries past their prime, things like that, while also removing the risk of having a young quarterback. Maybe the young quarterback doesn't pan out. We know what Geno Smith looks like. This is a new strategy in roster management and roster construction in the NFL. And we saw it work in 2022 when the Seattle Seahawks leaped into the playoffs and gave the San Francisco 49ers a tough battle. It is likely the Seattle Seahawks team will continue to get better. And as they get better, it will become more clear that the Russell Wilson trade is one of the greatest, if not the smartest move in NFL history.